assume you're ready for the meeting.
I'm on.
Okay.
Are you expecting Melissa?
She may be a little late, she said.
Okay.
Okay, I guess we can get started. Just turned 4, I think. Good afternoon, everybody. This is the Thursday, February 17th, 2022, 4 p.m. Nantucket Board of Health meeting. Just like to remind everybody that this meeting is being recorded by video and audio. And pursuant to the governor's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law and extending them to April 1st of 2022. Any Nantucket public body that holds a meeting can do so via Zoom video conferencing. The video conference will be shown on Nantucket's government TV YouTube page, which allows for the public to participate in the meeting as an attendee. Attendees must register to participate. The registration link is unique to the meeting. The registration link can be found in the description of the Nantucket Government TV YouTube live feed for the meeting. People registering to be an attendee must use their names, otherwise they will not be allowed to participate in the discussion. Attendees will join in listening mode. They can click the raise hand button if they wish to speak. Chair will call on those who have raised their hands in order they were raised. If you do not have an audio capable device, the Q&A button can be used to type a question. The YouTube chat will no longer be enabled. Any questions that cannot be verbally asked must use the Q&A function. All questions should be directed through the chair. And for attendance purposes, as I see, can you acknowledge that you are present for the meeting? Kathy Flynn.
Present.
James Cooper.
Here.
Jake Bisco, Inspector.
Here.
Kathy LaCave, Inspector.
Present.
John Hedden, Inspector.
Here.
Malcolm McNabb, Board Member.
Present.
Roberto Santamaria, Director.
Present.
Meredith Lepre, Board
Here.
Member. And all of the people that are attending, if you could announce your name when it's your time to speak for the record, that would be great. Do we see, let's see, was there any public comment before we get started, or is there anything that's not on the agenda that anybody would like to talk about?
Quick one, if I may. We at the next board meeting, I told my fellow board members to not bother this time. So just as a heads up, at the next board meeting, the health agents from Martha's Vineyard will also be joining us, so that we can do a quick introduction over the SAFE grant that we have received and discuss some of the collaborations that we've been doing.
Malcolm?
Just to announce that April 2nd, our genetic mice group from MIT will be on the island to give their update. We've been almost over a year since we heard from them. They made progress. So it's Saturday, April 2nd. I'd appreciate if you'd all put it on your calendars.
Is that going to be on a meeting, you through the webinar?
Yeah, we'll have the steering committee, Board of Health meeting. It'll be public and we'll find a place to have it.
Is there anything else? I think so. Okay, we'll go to Roberto with the director's report.
My announcement is probably better for the director's report. Yes, so the grant, this State Action on Public Health Excellence Grant, SAPHE.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah,
Could
go ahead. I'm sorry.
Roberto speak up a little bit? Maybe I'm getting older. My hearing is
No, it is a little low. Yeah, I
Yeah, I
just
think-
a
noticed.
little muffled.
Yeah,
So
I
it's
think-
not me.
No,
Good.
it's not.
I think my microphone was probably facing in the wrong direction. Is this better?
Yes.
Okay,
It's still a little low.
interesting. That's okay. I'll see what I can figure out as I move along. Is this any better? I have a second microphone.
That's better.
Okay. Okay, so yeah, my presentation, my comment was probably better for the director's report. That the State Action for Public Health Excellence grant that we received back in May is now in full swing. We've been able to hire a Patrick Roden Reynolds from the Nevada Department of Agriculture. He moved over to, he's in Martha's Vineyard right now, but he will also be doing tick and biology vector-borne illness research for both the Vineyard and Nantucket. So we can have him at next meeting. Alexis Babian, who is a social and behavioral health epidemiologist, will be doing research and data information, data research for human services, as well as health department, things on behavioral health and things like that. So I'll have her show up, and then Selena Guimaraes. She's going to be our food auditor, where her job would be to make sure that food inspections are done at the FDA standard. They're more. We actually have our staff trained on standardization, but with the 6 different boards of health on Martha's Vineyard, it's a little bit harder for them to do. So she'll be focusing more of her work on the vineyard. So I'll be setting that up so that it can be a agenda item at next Board of Health meeting. And with that, I think the other 2 major issues are already agenda items, Pfas and COVID. So we'll get to that at the end. And we're moving towards relative normality. So we'll be moving back to getting our performance management software that we were working on before kind of revamped and up and running, so that we can start doing more numbers reporting like we were doing before COVID. So starting to normalize a little.
Okay, we'll go to the next agenda item. Review of the minutes from January 20th, 2022. Any revisions, corrections? Malcolm?
A minor, maybe grammatical on page 3. At the top where it says McNabb, if there is a positive antigen test confirmed that NCH won't do PCR, there needs to be another word in there. Confirmed that NH will not, or something. Just language. If Terry could fix that, that's all.
Do we need to check and see if she heard us? She probably did.
I was getting that all down, and yeah, I can make that change. And so you can approve it as amended.
Yeah, I move we approve the minutes as amended.
Second.
Okay, all in favor by roll call vote. Jim Cooper,
Yes.
Malcolm McNabb,
Yes.
Meredith Lepre,
Yes.
and Steve Visco says yes. Minutes amended. Okay, next, release of ACO 52 Tennessee Ave. Fully compliant septic system.
Yes, so this part and the next part are the release of the ACO, and then the loan request for 52 is the next agenda item. What it is just they're going to install a fully compliant IA system, and in order to do that, we need to release the ACO. for them to get the loan. No objections on any of it.
Take a motion to release.
I'll make a motion to accept.
Second,
All in favor by roll call vote, Jim Cooper,
Yes,
Malcolm McNabb,
yes,
Meredith Leffery,
Yes.
and Steve Visco says yes. A loan request for Bartholomew, 52 Tennessee Ave.
The same property as the last one, no objections.
I moved, we approve the loan request.
second,
Favor by roll call vote, Jim Cooper,
yes,
Malcolm McNabb,
Yes,
Meredith Leffery,
Yes.
and Steve Visco says yes. Okay, another loan release for 9 Bayberry Lane, Norris.
So this is a property that will be paying out, is paid off the rest of the loan. So we just need to release the lien on the property. Good to go.
Motion to,
I'll make a motion to accept.
Second.
all in favor by roll call, Jim Cooper,
Yes,
Malcolm McNabb,
yes,
Meredith Leffery,
Yes.
and Steve Visco says yes. Okay. We got a variance request for 2 Creek Lane. Separation and flow, and I think Jeff Blackwell's gonna speak on that, but I'll let Roberto say anything first if he needs to.
Yeah, these next two are Jeff, I believe, Creek and Korea Lanes. So I'll go ahead and yield the floor to Jeff for both of these.
Thank you, Jeff Blackwell, for the owners, the Lintons. The Lintons are proposing to put an addition on their home, and that requires an upgrade of the septic system with IA treatment. The entire septic system will be, the existing conventional system will be abandoned, and an entirely new system will be installed in its place. Within the last year or two, the original Nantucket regulations were expanded to take effect throughout the entire Nantucket Harbor Watershed District. And those early 1970s regulations included quite restrictive property line setback requirements and well separation requirements. As you probably know, Fisher's Landing is the first cluster subdivision that was created on Nantucket, and the lots are subsized in order to create a large open space around that is protected from development. So it's, you know, the regulations came in well after the creation, some 50 years after the creation of these lots. And the first variance request is a waiver from the 50-foot separation between the new leach field and property lines. The second request is a waiver from the nitrate loading limitation of 1 bedroom for 10,000 square feet. And the Board of Health made a general policy for Fisher's Landing back in 2015, which Steve Visco shared with me. Basically, lots of 10,000 square foot size would be allowed 3 bedrooms as long as they included IA treatment. And 12,000 square foot lots would be allowed 4 bedrooms with IA treatment. The Linton's property is well above that. It's almost 21,000 square feet. And as such would be a candidate for the 4-bedroom flow with IA treatment. So those are the two elements to the requests that are before the Board of Health this afternoon, and I will try to answer any questions that you may have.
Anybody, Kathy?
So I may be jumping the gun. Thank you, Mr. Chair. If anyone has any questions, but I just wanted to give our positive recommendation on this request. The separation from the leach facility to the property line obviously can't meet the 50 feet, but it does meet 10 on the primary as well as the reserve areas. So that's good. They're going to be giving us a net benefit with the microfast. So the only thing I would add to it is, before we sign a CFC, obviously the usual as-built O&M and the recorded deeds notice on the property would be in order. And one other item, the original permit from, it was either 99 or 95, called out a garbage grinder. So with this new permit, I would just like to inspect the system prior to issuing the CFC, inspect the house really for either lack of or removal of the garbage grinder. And, if there's any questions, certainly, I'll step back, but I just wanted to throw those few things out there. Thank you.
Thanks, Kathy. I'll just say too, to, maybe remind the board, this was years ago when Fisher's Landing actually had a few vacant lots left inside there. A couple of them were at 10,000 square feet, and along Creek Lane where this property is, there were at least 2 or 3 others that were vacant, and we, they didn't have a true aggregate plan that was ever recorded, but they, even with build out, they have room for many more bedrooms. So we decided, the original lots didn't have a design septic plan that they filed with the Board of Health. So we decided to give the half-acre lots 4 bedrooms and the 10,000 square foot ones 3 bedrooms on new construction. Some of the places in there pre-existing, there's actually have a lot, some of the 10,000 square foot lots that have 5 or 6 bedrooms on them. And, same with the other ones that they did prior to all these rules changing. So that's why Jeff's here before us for the variance. Anybody else have any questions for Jeff or anybody else? A motion to approve or disapprove the variance for 2 Creek Lane.
Make a motion to approve.
Take a second.
Second.
All in favor by roll call vote. Jim Cooper,
Yes.
Malcolm McNabb,
Yes.
Meredith Lepre,
Yes.
Melissa, who has just joined us,
Thank you. Yes.
and Steve Isco says yes. That carries. Variance request for 3 Korea Lane, and I think this is also Jeff.
So Jeff, take it away.
Thank you. Thank you, Matt, or Mr. Chair. The request that is before you is for a shared septic system. Currently, the Michael Vino and Barbara Morley's property is a single lot of size that would allow up to 7 bedrooms with an IA septic system. And the owners would like to subdivide off a parcel under the Nantucket Housing Needs Covenant Program and convey that to their daughter and son-in-law. And the configuration of wells and septic systems around the property are such that a shared septic system can be installed in a fully compliant manner and used by both properties. The shared system portion of Title V requires covenants and easements and obligations between the owners for use and sharing of the maintenance costs that are associated with any septic system. And a draft covenant and easement document has been prepared by attorney Julie Fitzgerald in anticipation of the soon to come conveyance. There's sort of a domino effect. Once the conveyance takes place to the children and son, or the daughter and son-in-law, then documents will be recorded and finalized, and those documents will become part of the final complete application to the health department for issuance of a installation permit. The sort of guiding principle with these shared systems is that they are not designed to allow either owner or the combination of the owners to obtain a larger system of greater capacity than could be obtained if the lot was kept as a single property. And that is exactly the compliance that we are proposing with this 7-bedroom IA system on the property. As I said, it meets all well separation and property line separation requirements, and everything will be put into place to comply with the Title V shared system requirements. So it's definitely, well, it's the first shared system I've worked on, but I think you may be seeing more of them as zoning evolves to try to make affordable housing for year-round residents easier to obtain. So I'm glad there's a provision in the Title V that sort of dovetails with the newer zoning codes to try to address the cost of real estate here in Nantucket. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer those.
Jim? Whose responsibility would it be if something should happen to the septic system or pumping it out when it's supposed to be pumped out? I mean, is there any way to keep track of what's going on with this? How is the responsibility shared?
The responsibility is memorialized and defined by the covenant and easement document. If you scroll down through the packet, you'll see the very comprehensive document that has been drafted to the extent it can be completed at this point, because the conveyance into the daughter and son-in-law has not taken place yet, but all those safeguards are part of the permit that is required. And I know Kathy and John have been provided, and Jake with the document, and Kathy has responded with an email, and we'll be expecting all the requirements to be fulfilled before a permit is issued. So if there's annual pump out or what have you of the septic tank, or the annual operations and maintenance contract, that is required to remain in place for the IA system, those costs will be shared by the owners, and that commitment is part of the covenant and easement document.
Okay, thank you.
Kathy?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, you know, as Jeff said, I did get a preliminary look at the plan. It's a good plan. I don't anticipate any issues with it. Each of these lots will have its own well. So obviously they can't share a well. So he was able to put a well on both properties. There is a 3-year inspection requirement by DEP for any shared system. So that's something that would get recorded under that easement. They'll also, as part of the finalization, the CSC of the system, they'll have to record the IA notice, the shared system notice, the operation and maintenance notice. So those are things before we sign off that we would make sure that they're all in place. And you know, the other thing I'd like to see, which might not be in there, but just that each of the dwellings is limited. For instance, the main dwelling that exists now, I'd like to see it limited to the 4-bedroom and just called out on the recorded notice. And the secondary dwelling, which will be the covenant dwelling, called out as a 3-bedroom limitation. So other than that, you know, I think everything looks good from a preliminary perspective on this property.
Melissa?
Thanks so much. I just wanted to go back to the question Jimmy was asking. Are the, you know, the sort of management agreements that will be recorded transferable if either party sells the parcel? And I ask that just because I think I've seen some shared systems and they worked well with the original parties who established them, but then one person sells and it becomes difficult to manage. So are those agreements transferable with the property?
Through the chair, if I may, they are absolutely transferable, and any I think the what we see for issues with shared systems are some of the Tristram's Landing properties where you have these townhouses that are all on a single system, and one of the unit owners wants to sell, and the 4 or 5 other unit owners don't want, you know, they're not part of the transaction, and you know, receiving a 5th share of a $100,000 or more septic system upgrade is a very unwelcome piece of news. This is a much smaller scale, and the conveyance of either one of these lots into a new owner is going to be predicated on continuation of that shared cost arrangement.
Okay.
Go ahead, Jim.
I have a question. Let's say it's a 6-bedroom system. One property has 4 bedrooms, the other property has 2 bedrooms. Now let's say the guy that has a 4-bedroom septic system wants to add another bedroom. If he adds another bedroom, you're going to have an IA system. What happens to the existing setup the way it is right now?
Well, if I may, through the chair, Kathy spoke to this point of having the designation between, in this particular case, is the existing house is 4 bedrooms and the new house will be 3 for a total of 7. And that is the capacity of the system. That is the maximum capacity allowed on this property, even taking into account the bedroom bonus that is allowed by utilization of a IA system. So let's say lot A, the larger lot is sold into a different ownership, the records at the health department will be very clear how the bedroom split is put in place originally for these owners. So a new owner of lot A will not be able to add a fifth bedroom. There's going to be those rails are already going to be on the permitting in the future. So basically what we're proposing now is the most that either of those properties could have for bedrooms.
Okay, thank you.
Any questions for Jeff? No. I think a motion to accept the variance.
I'll make a motion to accept.
I'll second.
Oh, Malcolm? Just have to unmute.
Malcolm, you're muted.
Mr. Chair, I apologize. Does this motion include Kathy's proposal of 4 and 3?
Yes, did you get a chance to look at the Jeff's plan? I mean, we could have had it.
Yes.
pulled from- It's
I've been spending the afternoon reading many things, so.
It's all dedicated on the plan, plus I don't know if you've ever, I've seen the paperwork with recording a covenant lot with a shared
Okay.
section, and it's quite extensive.
So I will second the motion.
Okay, thanks. All in favor by roll call vote? Jim Cooper,
Yes,
Malcolm McNabb,
Yes,
Eric Lepre,
Yes.
Melissa Murphy,
Yes.
and Steve Visco says yes. Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you very much.
Okay, next on the agenda, we have variance request for 6 Huntington, waive of IA requirement.
Yes, it looks like the person who applied for the variance did not show up. So we'll go straight to the recommendation. John?
Yes. This was a building application that came in, I think a little bit before the holidays. It's for, they want to build a garage with a master bedroom up above. It's an 8,000 square foot lot, and it has 3 bedrooms already. So in that regard, it's already non-compliant, the size of the lot for the nitrogen load. This is Tom Nevers. And they wanted to do some reconfiguration of the main house to allow this garage to go in with this master bedroom. Just to add more space, I suppose. But so the builder submitted the application, and after I reviewed it, they have a 1,000-gallon tank, septic tank, which they're required to have at least a 1,500-gallon tank. And furthermore, since it's an undersized lot for 3 bedrooms, they're required to upgrade to an IA system to maximum feasible compliance for the lot. And they're applying to seek a variance not to have to put in the IA system. So
Before we go any further, I'm just going to give the board a little background of the property and what this board has allowed out in that area and in certain places where it's not in a nitrogen sensitive zone. So this house sold a few years ago, and it failed the septic. It had the hydraulic failure. And then on these smaller lots, the board would allow a conventional repair under maximum feasible compliance, as long as you didn't do anything. So the 3-bedroom house had a hydraulic failure. We allowed the 3-bedroom repair conventionally. So what triggers this now is under new construction. New construction now comes under maximum feasible compliance. Doesn't matter how, if you added a little bump out, it would trigger now adding the IA component to be able to get your permit. So as long as that person didn't do anything to the house and wanted to keep it the way it is, he'd be fine. This system was just repaired with new trenches, I believe, like 3 years ago. So now he's under new construction rules, and this is why he's seeking the waiver from not having to put the IA component in.
Correct.
Did I get that right, John?
Yes, and,
Yes.
you know, if I could, Mr. Chairman, add, you know, I think there was, you know, a confusion or something, I'm not, you know, by the applicant, you know, perhaps coming to our office, speaking to us, seeing what's required and everything, and this seems to have gone back almost a year now, apparently, speaking with the builder and everything. And we're certainly here to help people come in and answer their questions and everything, but the bottom line is, until we have a building application in front of us that we're going to review, that's when we're going to give our full input and tell you what is completely required. You submit an application with a proposal, and we review it and see how it lines up with the septic system that's on the property. So, you know, guess it's unfortunate. There's a lot of work that goes all into this and everything. But, you know, and everybody's looking to have a quick response. But until we review an application, that's when the answer is really going to come through of, you know, when we do all our research. We just can't do all that preliminary research all the time, you know, to figure out what's going to go on, and proposals change over time and everything. So just want to say that, you know, when this came in and I reviewed it, I noticed they had the 1,000-gallon tank. I noticed they had the 8,000 square foot lot, and this is what's required.
Jim?
The other thing you have to remember out there is there are a lot of lots that are very tiny like that. And we've never agreed to give a thing like this before. Am I right?
To waive not having to do it, I would say no, we haven't.
All right, so if we break the trend and we give this guy a permit, we let him have a variance. You know how many hundreds of houses are out there, and how many of those lots are 10,000, 8,000, 12,000? You're gonna have everybody and the brother wanting to put another bedroom in, and then you give it to this guy, you have to give it to everyone. And that's the thing that keeps bothering me. We set our sights one way, we made the rules for the way they were. And I, for one, want to keep the rules the way they are. You break them for one person, and you have to give everybody that gets in line the same break that you gave the guy in the first time around. So just think of that.
Anybody else? Any questions for John on this? We good? Okay. So can I get a motion to approve or disapprove this variance request?
If you're asking me, I'll make a motion to deny.
I will second.
Okay, all in favor by roll call vote? Jim Cooper,
Aye.
Malcolm McNabb,
Aye.
Melissa Murphy,
Aye.
and Meredith Ledbury.
Aye.
Oh, we got two ayes there. And Steve Visco says yes. So that gets denied. You have to put the IA component in. Okay, so next, this one at 189 Eel Point. Because I am involved with this property, I am going to recuse myself from this variance request and turn this over to our vice chair, Malcolm McNabb.
Thank you. Roberto, staff member, whatever.
Yes, so I think Paul Santos is here for the applicant, and I believe the applicants are also here. So Paul, floor is
Okay.
yours.
Thank you, Malcolm. Thank you, Roberto. So Paul Santos with Nantucket Surveyors on behalf of the applicant, property owner for this particular property. This is a variance request from local Board of Health Regulation 51.00, which is your town of Nantucket Board of Health Regulations affecting Nantucket. Property is located at 189 Eel Point Road. It's a signature piece of property at the end of Eel Point Road, contains approximately 4.6 acres. Property has been in the ownership of Fernando Colon Osario and Lori Margolis since approximately 1991. And it was purchased by the land bank in January of this year. I believe both Jesse Bell from the land bank is on the call, representing essentially the owner of the property, now the land bank. And Fernando's on the property too, as Fernando, with his agreement with the land bank, is staying on the property for a period of 5 years as a leasee. At the end of that 5-year period, which would be January 21st, 2027, Fernando would vacate the premises and the land bank would take full possession. And at that time, they will remove the existing dwelling. It'll either be moved off-site or raised. And the existing septic system that is presently on the property will be abandoned. The site itself, as I had said, is a 4.6 acre piece of property, and there is a modest home on the property that houses a 3-bedroom septic system. So under your local regulation 51.06B, basically the system upon transfer of property, which just happened, in any condition requiring an upgrade or repair, would require that the system be converted to an IA system. The system itself is a fully functioning system. It's functioning under the state environmental code. It is a technical failure under local regulations for 2 reasons. It has less than 6-foot groundwater separation to the system. It has an excess of 5, but it doesn't have the 6 required. And it also is not an IA system in the Nantucket Harbor Watershed Protection District. The site itself is in both a nitrogen sensitive area under the local regulation and the state regulations. To give a sense of scale, the size of the parcel, which is approximately 4.6 acres, I had said, that's equates to about a little over 200,000 square feet of land area. Under local and state regulations, the nitrate loading limitations basically limit you to 1 bedroom per 10,000 square feet of a property. In this case, under those standards, you'd be allowed 20 bedrooms on this piece of property. There currently exists a 3-bedroom system. So the reason we're here before you today is it's a bit of a unique situation, whereas your regulations would require the addition only of an IA component to the system. Simply, if this was a private sale, the prior owners would put in an IA component or a nitrogen removal septic tank on the property. And then the system that's currently there would continue to function normally as it does. In this situation, based on the size of the property, based on the nature and the fact that in 5 years, this system is going to be abandoned and this property is going to be become part of the open space that's controlled by the land bank, we're asking that the system continue to be used in the manner it's currently being used in. The home will be continued to be occupied by Fernando and his wife Lori. And that at the end of the 5 years, when it's removed, the system goes back to its natural state. I did include in your packet the approximate cost estimate of an upgrade. Typically, this upgrade of this tank would be that's in the vicinity of about $40,000 for the purposes of putting the IA tank on the property. Again, based on the size of the property, based on the unique situation and where the system is effectively going to be abandoned in 5 years, we respectfully ask the board to waive the requirement for the IA upgrade. I've also put in the request, the provision that the leasee, Fernando, is willing to inspect the system within the 5-year time frame as the board sees fit, whether that's at a 2-year time frame or a 2.5-year time frame, that the system just doesn't be allowed to continue to be used within that 5-year time frame. It continues to be inspected, so there is never a hydraulic failure of the system. It's always technical in nature, and by technical in nature, I mean the system's fully functioning. It just doesn't meet the 6-foot groundwater separation, and there's no hydraulic failure to the existing system. So with that, happy to answer any questions that the board may have, and then happy to hear what staff's recommendation may be for this particular request. Again, Jesse Bell is here, Fernando's here, but I think it's kind of self-explanatory what we're looking to do out here and what we're asking the board for. Thank you for your time.
All right, thank you. I have a question and we'll go to the staff. Supposing in 5 years, the land bank decides to sell to someone else, or they want to keep the house there, what happens if we grant this? Because you said maybe they'll.
All right, did
Take
you
the
say
house
this is a
up.
question for staff, Malcolm?
It's a question for anybody.
Okay,
I can speak to that too, if you want me to.
go ahead, Jesse.
Right ahead.
Well, it's very difficult for the land bank to sell property. We would need town meeting approval as well as legislative authority to do that. And we really never do that unless there's an overriding public purpose for doing that. And that is definitely not a property that we would be looking to dispose of. That is 100% conservation land. And, that wouldn't be something we would be trading with the town for any reason. And as far as the other question, the commission is willing to commit that we will not use that property for housing. So we can pretty much guarantee that we will, have it removed, and it's going to be helping to create additional beach parking and beach access for the public.
Jim.
You stated that if this was a private sale, what do you mean by a private sale? It's the rules are the rule. To me, it doesn't. I don't care who bought it, whether it's the land bank or it's the guy next door. Why wasn't this system put in before the sale? That's what I want to know. I don't care if it's a land bank. Who cares if it's a land bank? The rules say if you have to have an IA system before you sell it, it should have been put in before the land bank bought it. And the other thing is, why should the land bank let that guy sit in there for 5 years and use a system that's not safe, that's not legal? That's ridiculous. The rules say that before the thing's sold to anybody, you're supposed to put the IA system in because the system isn't functioning right. And I want to know why that wasn't done before the sale.
So there's been an escrow retained that's, dependent on the outcome of this meeting. So if it's required that, a septic gets replaced, then there has been money that's been retained for that. So
So are you saying you don't own it or you do own it?
we do own it.
If you own it, then that system should have been put in before you signed the papers to buy it. This is ridiculous. Why should that person be able to sit in there with a system that's no good for 5 years when we have made everybody else that came before this board abide by the rules? And the $40,000 has nothing to do with the Board of Health. We have nothing to do with money or cost or anything. We're here to provide the rules, and the rules say that thing should have been done before the sale. And that's where I stand.
Thank you, Jim.
If I can respond to that.
Yes, respond, then let's hear from staff after you respond, Paul.
So it is not considered like, I don't think it's considered like a private sale, Jim. Any private owner is not buying a piece of property, tearing the house down and abandoning the system within whether it's a year, 5 years or whatever. This is a unique situation. Is the system will not be there in 5 years. And the fact that you're saying it's unsafe, it's not an unsafe system. Its system functions under the state code. It meets the state code with regard to groundwater separation. This has to do with the local regulation. It's not an unsafe system. It meets the nitrate loading requirements of both locally and state, which says that 1 bedroom per 10,000 square feet of lot area. So, it is different in the fact that it's the land bank. I mean, you can't ignore the fact that the property is getting put into the open space and the system goes away. A fully functioning system. If this was a hydraulic failure, it would have been replaced. It would have to be replaced. So in my opinion, this is completely unique than any other variance request that you have that somebody's coming in, because you've got an insurance that at the end of the day, you've got a large tract of land that's providing a public benefit. That's going to be, the system is going to be removed.
Well, what are you looking for variance for?
The system stays in place. We're just not putting in the IA tank.
Why?
Because
Right.
Jim, there's circumstances relating to this piece of property that really don't warrant it. The IA tank in this situation is not giving the town, it's not giving anybody any additional environmental protection for this particular piece of property. You've got
Okay.
a three bedroom system
Right,
on
thank you.
200,000 square feet.
Thank you, Paul and James. I think we have your opinions. I'd like to hear from Roberto or the staff about this.
I think at this point,
Okay,
I was not expecting that.
all right, Melissa.
Thank you, Malcolm. I guess I do have a question though for the staff, because if the only requirement to upgrade the system is because the property transferred ownership, not because the property's dysfunctioned, the future use of the property beyond the 5 years is not going to be to have a house or residential use. And there's a commitment and a willingness from the land bank and the owner to have the system tested, keep the money in escrow, and upgrade it if it hits hydraulic failure. It does make sense to me that there is not a pressing need to upgrade the system. And I'm wondering if I'm misinterpreting that. Because I guess I do want to hear from staff on these regulations. The property transfer is typically ruled because once the property is transferred, the intended use is going to be the same. With the land bank as the purchaser and giving this person 5 years to stay on the property before it becomes open space, that's a very different equation than I think was considered when these rules were put in place. So I would love to hear the opinion from the staff if there is the proposal that out of bounds.
So there are many factors coming in, and there are different situations here, and I think everyone in the staff has seen their own ways, seen this in different ways. Do I think it's an unreasonable request? No. Do I think that the IA system will we be setting a precedent? Absolutely. And that's where I see Jimmy's point. And I think Kathy and John they've researched this way more than I have. And I think it would be a really good idea to just hear them out before we hear more. Yeah.
Right. So let's have Kathy, John, and then Melissa had her hand up. In that order.
Thank you, Dr. McNabb. We've had this situation before. In fact, we've had a couple of times where we've had to actually ticket folks that transferred their property without upgrading. It is a local regulation, correct? It's 5 feet is the state and 4 feet in some instances is the state. But this is a nitrogen sensitive zone. And in my opinion, 5 years is too long to let someone be there without dropping in the microfast or a septic. We've had every other homeowner do this without the benefit of selling their property. They're transferring it to someone else, and yes, it's the land bank, but it's still a transfer. Money is still changing hands. We've taken folks to court. We've ticketed them daily, and it's not pleasant, but it's something that we have to do. The local regulation is written to protect our groundwater, our sensitive drinking water, and our recreational water. So I don't think we can do this for one and not the other. We've also had instances in the past where there have been some, not a life estate, but some long-term use of a property after it's been sold to the land bank, and sometimes 5 years turns into 10, turns into 15. And, we just don't want to be chasing people. The rules are the rules for a reason. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And John, you have a comment?
Yes, I think it's the regulation. The property changed hand. This was put in place as a mechanism to improve the environment. So they're out of compliance for 5 years. That's goal is to get people on IA systems to improve the environment. The regulation, property transfer, you upgrade. So they're out of compliance for a number of years. So what happens when it's a hydraulic failure within 1 year of them moving out or something? Well, they're not going to repair it, even though it's a hydraulic failure within that period. So yeah, they need to upgrade.
Yeah, but it's my understanding the proposal would be that if there was a failure, that it would be replaced and fixed in that 5-year period. Am I correct?
That is correct, Malcolm.
Yes. And Melissa, you had your hand up before.
I did, and thank you to staff for your responses, but I'm not sure that I heard that there was that there had been these kinds of land transfers to the land bank where the intended use was to go to open space after a period of time. So the bylaw as it's written makes a tremendous amount of sense to me. In this instance, I'm curious, were these specific kind of land transfers considered? As it is today, if the original owners had the property, they would be in compliance, they would be in technical failure, they would not be in hydraulic failure, they would not be required to upgrade their system. It's only because the property transferred ownership that they're required to upgrade. And so I see Steve, I just want to make sure I'm not missing anything.
Yes, Steve, you want to comment even though you're not going to vote? You're muted.
I got it. I mean, listen, here's the thing. For some reason, in this property We're supposed to have an inspection back in 2006. How it got missed? It's in zone A. We just sent out last year almost 100, which you got some of them through
Oh,
Tristan,
yeah.
with a technical failure, which his had, which we would have found back in 2007. May have replaced the septic then and got it fixed to, he wouldn't even have had to put maybe an IA in then because he has, you know, he has the 10,000 square feet per bedroom. We would have replaced it, but we would have found that. Lo and behold, he didn't, says he never got the letter requiring inspection. He's in zone A. It's right on the marsh. So I don't know where you're going with that. There is an environmental benefit with putting the IA in. You're cutting the nutrient level in half. He doesn't have 6 feet. I just want to, this should have been caught a long time ago, but yes, we can now on the transfer.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's helpful.
I have one more question. So why wasn't this upgrade before the transfer? I think that was a question of Jim's. Somebody?
Yeah.
I'll answer that.
Yeah.
He wasn't required to upgrade the system. Nobody's required to upgrade a system prior to a transfer unless the parties at hand cut a deal to say, I'm not going to take possession of the property until the new septic's in. Usually we catch that there's a problem and a failure prior to a closing, and then the two parties work out an escrow.
Okay.
To repair the septic after.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Malcolm, there is an escrow in place right now pending the finding of this board. And then if this board denies this variance, there'll be an application put before the board and the system will be upgraded.
Okay,
I
fine.
think it's actually not being occupied at the present time. Typically, it's not occupied in the winter.
Okay, Meredith, I have to hear from you.
One question on the GIS, it says it's 4 bedrooms. Is it 3 bedrooms or 4 bedrooms?
No, it's a 3-bedroom. It's a 3-bedroom system.
Or it says the house is 4 bedrooms. I
I
don't
don't know
know.
what, I'm just saying that the Title V, the approved plan is a 3-bedroom.
Okay.
We often see that with GIS and septic plans where the way we count bedrooms is not the same way the assessor counts bedrooms for tax purposes.
What is the, I guess, environmental impact of like digging everything up and putting in a new system for a short amount of time as far as all of the equipment and disruption of the area? I guess septic systems are not my specialty, so I'm just wondering what is the effect of that?
Well, Meredith, the system itself, for those who are familiar with the house kind of sits down in a kind of a low point in the lot. It would just be a replacement of the septic, of the tank. The trench and the groundwater separation would be compliant with the addition of a new innovative alternative septic tank. So it would be a single tank would replace the existing tank that's there. And that would occur outside of the 100-foot setback to the resource area, which is the marsh. And it would occur in the front portion of the lot. I mean, there'd be some disruption out there, obviously, but it would occur. The septic tank is in the vicinity of the existing driveway.
All right, do we have any more comments from anyone?
Yes,
Please, Fernando, go ahead.
yes, my name is Fernando Colon Osorio. I was the owner of the property. I have always been in support of all the environmental conditions in Nantucket. I have contributed money to marsh restoration. I have kept the property in good shape. The system works. It has never been a problem. The house is a 3-bedroom system. And in terms of this, I made a commitment to the land bank in spite of all the vultures that wanted to buy this and put for applications for a larger development at a significantly financial cost to me, because I wanted it to go to the Nantucket Land Bank and to give access to the town to the beach. And because I wanted, as a contribution to my dear friend Bern and my mother, create a place where people can come and watch birds. For that matter, I'm making a contribution to the land bank to build a platform in the future for bird watching if it's allowed by the town in the name of Bern. Fundamentally, I have done all of this to benefit Nantucket. And it's not unreasonable on my part to say, gee, I'm going to be there at most 5 years. This will be abandoned. It is in a technical failure because the regulations changed. I have plenty of land, never mind the 4.564 acres. I already transferred to the land bank an additional acre, which is close to the water, actually next to the water. So I did this transfer with one intention, to help Nantucket. And I feel that if you vote against this variance, you'll be penalizing me in top of all the things that I've tried doing for the good of the town. And the town needed this land to be able to access Eel Point. There's no place anymore to park. We have all kinds of problems there. And I was trying to help the island. And I feel a little bit dismissed and abused by a simple request. So that may be emotional on my part, and I apologize for that. But you know, when you're trying to do the right thing, you expect that people will understand that you're trying to do the right thing, and that the town will understand that this is clearly a technical failure because we changed the regulations in Nantucket a few years back. And that's all I have to say.
Well, thank you very much, and I appreciate what you've done for the island. I think we're all trying to struggle here with the multiple regulations and what's best. But if we denied this variance, that $40,000 would come from the land bank, not from you. Am I correct?
Oh, the money comes from me.
Okay. Okay. Anybody else? And then we'll wrap this up because I think we'll just go around. We have Meredith and then Jim.
So I do think a little bit that it does matter that it's going to the land bank and not, I mean, it sounds like it should have been fixed years ago, but I do think a little bit that it is, we know that this system is going to be used for 5 years max and then going to be pulled up and this land is going to be open. I guess if there was in the agreement that this land would not be able to be built on at all, or any septic systems after this time, I would maybe be okay with it staying like it is for 5 years. If there would be like, can we do that? Can we say that if we give the variance, it's under the assumption that it's because it's the land bank? Sorry. Because it's land bank and we know that it's only going to be used for 5 years.
Yes, if we do grant the variance, it would have to state that the septic system has to be pulled out in 5 years, period. I mean, just has to be. Yes, Kathy.
I just have to caution, we're going down a really slippery slope. We've had this issue before with the same exact issue with houses that were going to be demoed and it was going to become public land. And I think we cannot have two sets of regulations for different scenarios like this. I mean, the regulations are in place for everybody. And, you know, we do have a loan program in place that, you know, for anybody that wants to upgrade their system, and that's available to everybody. So I think we'd set a very dangerous precedent if we went down this road. It would be a lot to manage.
But Kathy, if in those cases, was it specifically said that these systems would not exist after a certain period of time?
Yes.
And why did that not happen?
What happened was the owner ended up staying on the property for a while, longer than we thought. So we had to ticket and bring them to court because the system was still used and not repaired. And eventually it got taken care of, but it was a very long process with a lot of court appearances and tickets. It just got dragged out longer than it should have.
I understand that, but can't we I'm not a lawyer, but can't we make it such that if we grant this variance, that it would absolutely have to, the house would go away and the septic system would go away in 5 years?
Well, I will say I deal with a lot of housing and I deal with court quite a bit, and I deal with court on septics. And it's not quick. Some of the issues we're dealing with now, I'm 2.5 years in and still nothing. The court, it gets dragged out, and COVID hasn't made it any better. So I think it would be a gamble for sure.
Can I speak?
Please, go ahead, Fernando.
The
You have the
contract that I wrote, the contract that the land bank and myself signed requires me to either destroy the house or move the house in 5 years. No if, buts, or else. That's why we put in escrow money for that effect. In top of that, the land bank and myself signed a lease for 5 years, which terminates in 5 years. So I don't see how I can stay in that property for more than 5 years. It's not in the contract that we signed. It's not in the legal documents of the transfer of the property, and it's not in the lease. So I am forced to vacate the property in 5 years. And in terms of the concern that she raises is a good one, because sometimes when you're trying to get someone out, and that's a good point that you make, Kathy, it takes a lot of effort. However, if you want me to, I will sign away any right to try to stay in the property legally, which can be done as a contract, that I will never try to stay beyond the 5 years. Although already exists with the contract that I did with the land bank. But if you want additional legal documents, I'm willing to sign whatever Kathy or anyone suggests, that at the end of the 5 years, I'm gone. And by the way, probably my wife and I will be gone before the 5 year. We're not young anymore. My wife is 75. I'm 72. We're getting to the point that being out there, it doesn't work for us anymore.
Well, someone who's 75 looks at anyone that's 75 and 73 as mature,
Oh,
not old.
thank you for that. But that's what my wife said.
I mean,
My wife says, you're old. You're just old.
no. So,
Malcolm,
yeah.
Malcolm, if with your permission, could I maybe just briefly offer a
Go
few
ahead.
more?
Go ahead,
Okay, thank
Paul. Then we'll talk to
Yeah.
Jim, and then we'll
Paul,
make a vote.
So
'Cause
just
I think
so,
we're going around in circles.
no, I think, I hope not. Just so, I mean, I think in this case, when we talk about precedent, I think the land bank, I mean, is a little bit different. In fact, that you've got a commitment from the land bank. I've seen the documents, I've seen the lease, I've seen the agreements between Fernando and the land bank with regard to what's happening in 5 years. And just to give a point of reference, similar to this, I mean, for all the Bachman property, I think, which was 158 Orange Street, was a similar, they were tied to sewer in that case, but that property was purchased by the land bank. Mike Bachman occupied it for a period of 5 years, at which point he vacated it. The home was torn down, and then we permitted a public access dock on the creeks, and the property rolled into the open space that was controlled by the land bank. A similar situation to this. Mike sold the property with the agreement to stay on it for a period of time. So this is not something that is new to the land bank, that this was that they do with many of their purchases, whether it's this or whether it's the Otison property, or any of the number of properties that they've purchased. The owners have kept for a period of time, and then it's become part of the public open space. So with regard to precedent, I think the land bank component, I'm not sure how many more people will come before you after this hearing and say, well, you did it for the land bank, because that's a different situation than the land bank. I think the precedent of the land bank transfer itself with a commitment to returning this property to open space does have some merit.
Okay,
you.
Jim has his comment, and then Jim will make the last comment, and then we'll go to a motion.
The Board of Health is here for people that come to us for variance, and we listen to them, and 99 times out of 100, they have done everything in their power to follow the rules to get something done. And if for some reason they can't meet the setbacks, or they can't do this, or they can't do that, and they've tried their hardest to do it, sometimes we will grant them a variance. There was no need at all in this. This is a simple thing. The rule is there. Before you transfer, you have to put the IA system in, okay? We're not talking about tons of money because the land bank is selling it and they've already said the whole deal is $40,000. Now, are we gonna go by the rules? I don't even see a reason for giving a variance when both sides can do what the rules state they can do and they should do. And I don't think we should bend at all because it is the land bank or because it is anybody else. We don't bend when two people, one's buying and one's selling, do we? We need to go by the rules. We're only here to give a variance when people come to us, they can't possibly make the rules work in their case. If they need 10 feet, 20 feet and they only have 10, well, we can't give someone another 10 feet, but we can give them a variance because they've followed the rules as far as they can. And believe me, this should have been done before the land bank bought it. You're talking about $40,000. I don't know how much money's passed between these two people, and I don't care. We don't have anything to do with cost or money. This should have been done before the land bank bought that property. Thank you.
James, can I ask you a question?
One more comment, then we're going to go to a motion.
No, it's more of a question because I'm confused. And maybe James says that this is the case, so I'm asking him directly. It is your understanding, James, that when the property is transferred, you have to upgrade the IED. Is that your understanding?
I asked the person from the land bank who owned the property and they said they did. So
Yes.
if they bought the property, they are the owners. And the rules say before you can buy the property, the IA system has to be put in. Am I right or am I wrong, Roberto?
I don't think you're right.
We allow the property to transfer with a permit often. But it's just like Steve mentioned earlier, usually it's done through an escrow process. We
So
do usually require the permitting though. And John, correct me if I'm wrong on any of that.
Okay. So this is a tough one. Because the system is functioning by some standard and not by others. We know in 5 years it is going to be torn up. And we have the commitment of that, a legal contract to the land bank. So 5 years, how much nitrogen in 5 years with an IA system will be saved? And I understand the property is not occupied all year. So we all can say there's an environmental impact. I'm not sure how great it is, but we have to move on. Can I have a motion to either deny or approve the variance? No motions.
I'll make a motion to deny.
We have a motion to deny. Do I hear a second? Well, we have a rules of order conflict here. With no second, what happens?
Motion dies.
Motion dies. So there is no motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the variance.
Do I have a second?
Second, only is there stipulation that this is because the property is going to be abandoned in 5 years?
So we have a motion to approve the variance with the stipulation that the property will absolutely 100% be abandoned in 5 years. That is the motion.
I accept that friendly amendment.
What's that?
I accept that amendment to my motion.
Thank you. Okay, so let's go to a vote. Jim Cooper,
No.
Meredith Lepre,
Yes.
Melissa Murphy.
Yes.
The vice chair votes yes. So the variance is accepted with the stipulation that the property will be abandoned in 5 years. Of
Malcolm,
course, yes,
we had also had that agreement about the inspection. Could we opine maybe on whether that's yearly or what you would like to see on that?
I would make a motion that it would have to be inspected yearly, and upon discovery of hydraulic failure, the system has to be upgraded immediately.
do I have a second?
Second.
And so the motion is that the system will be inspected yearly. If there's a failure, the system will be upgraded and repaired as appropriate by the rules. Jim Cooper,
No,
Meredith Lepre,
Yes.
Melissa Murphy,
Yes.
Malcolm McNabb says yes. Okay, thank you all. It was I myself, during the course of this debate, went back and forth. So it was a tough one, but I think it was a rational one. Mr. Chairman, it's back to you.
Thank you, everyone.
Back on.
Mr. Chair, I would like to thank the committee for their thoughtful consideration of this and for the modifications that they made to the amendment. Thank you so much, guys. And I hope that if you get a chance in the future, go by Yield Point and enjoy that beautiful place. Burns said always that the best place to watch birds in Nantucket was right at the deck in my house. And you're all invited to go and watch birds at the house.
Okay, thank you, Fernando. Okay, we'll move on. Next on the agenda, COVID update.
Okay. All right. Not much following that, sorry. So with COVID, we're doing well. We're doing very well. So I'm going to go ahead and share the screen real quick. I just need to close a few items. Okay. So what you'll see here is the graph of the viral concentration over the time. This one came in, this result came back yesterday, and we are basically back. We're really close to baseline again. So if you don't mind, I'm going to do a quick scroll down. So that is the incidence rate that we're expecting. So it has, so in the original conversation that we were having with the board of the select board, with the select board, if you remember, I mentioned a few weeks back when we were seeing that first spike from Omicron, is that we don't have a large population to sustain a very extended burn. And at the rate of infection that we were seeing, and with mild symptomology that we were seeing from Omicron, we were able to quickly see a burn and then a quick drop off in cases, which is what we saw in this situation. Do I think COVID is over? No. Do I think we're getting to a situation where we can understand it being in a more endemic situation? Absolutely. And as we move into the spring, we'll probably see one more spike post school vacation. And then after that, we will see where we were, hopefully, knock on wood, where we were at that point last year, where we get down to this baseline, couple cases a week, and then we continue on moving there. What we'll probably see as well, what I'm hearing about in the literature, is that we're probably going to be moving towards a seasonal vaccination program. And with that, I think I'll finish the update, because it's the no news is good news in situations like this.
Melissa?
Thanks so much, Steve. Roberto, how are the vaccination opportunities for kids 5 to 12 going? I know that's not under the town purview, but do you have any update on that?
Yes, sorry about that. Yes. So there's good news on that one. We've been in conversation with the state, and one of the things that so the same program that was running the school clinics, they're going to be coming down and we're going to be able to set up entire areas where just kids get vaccinated, and they'll be able to handle all of it. So we're trying to set it up so that they come in here when we move towards the state taking over. The clinic is happening right now with Heather. But once the state takes over, we're going to be moving the clinics to about once every other week or once a month. And once we move to that, we're going to have entire sections cut off just for children, just for the ages 5 to 11. So they should be able to now handle all of that, which will be really great. Our biggest issue that we were running into, and the biggest hesitancy that we were seeing, was that we didn't have any clinical space. So the only program that was able to do it was the ones that were happening in the schools. And often that program that the state was doing at the schools was getting hijacked by people looking for boosters and second doses. Now with the new program, we'll be able to set off entire sections just for children. So it is a big progress on that.
May I ask a quick follow-up on that, Steve?
Yeah.
If and when vaccines are approved for the younger age group, that age range, would that same model follow, do you think? Have those discussions happened?
Yes. So the way the state program works is they bring down 10 people and they basically create a clinical setting at the location. In our case, it was just Heather, the backup nurse, and a couple of volunteers. In this case, we'll only need one volunteer, and the state takes care of everyone else. And they're willing to do the entire age group, regardless of the approval.
Great. I just want to make sure as a community we're prepared when the next age group gets approval and parents are eager to get those younger kids vaccinated too. But that's all great progress. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
That it on that? Okay. Another good thing on the agenda, PFAS update.
Yes. So real quick, being cognizant of all the time. Last week, I was one of the panelists at the school committee meeting regarding the turf hearing. They had the scientists from Weston and Sampson who discussed the risk assessment that they had done and the toxicology information that they had. And then there was also a series of scientists from all over the United States who are experts in PFAS. It was very interesting to hear both sides. We were trying to keep the health department as neutral as possible on this. One of my biggest takeaways, a couple of big takeaways from that, and it's available online to be able to watch. It was recorded as a school committee meeting. A couple of big takeaways is there's no research on all of the PFAS products that are shown up in turf. They're able to do the risk assessment based on the PFAS they know exists, but they don't know how much PFAS doesn't exist within, or that isn't quantified in the turf. So the known quantity that we keep hearing is the PVDF, which the argument is that it's inert, it doesn't necessarily break down, whole 9 yards. But they don't know if there is other types of PFAS in it. There are over 6,000 molecules. And that, in my opinion, is not good. That is an issue. The other aspect that I saw is that there is very strong advocacy against PFAS specifically, and PFAS is the problem specifically. So one of my suggestions, I didn't say it on TV, but I did talk to a couple members afterwards, and I wanted to bring it up here, is that PFAS itself is the problem. So it's the same, so if we want to make standards, we should make standards for PFAS specifically. If we start banning an entire industry like turf in 10 years or something, or 20 years, if anything does change, we won't be able to install that product, even if it is better or pure or whatever other words that it'll be used, we'll use. Sorry about that. My staff turned off the light. So I would say that before we propose any sort of a ban or anything like that, I think to turf, I would say we propose a ban, if we do propose any bans, on PFAS itself. The product, the contaminant, which is our biggest issue. It's the same, it's a similar concept. The metaphor I've been using is, we didn't ban soda because we know aluminum is bad for you. You know, you just change a container. So that's kind of where we are. And then in conversations of having joint meetings, one of the big parts that we've been running into internally is there may be information, there may be some interest, and Melissa, correct me if I'm wrong, from the select board to also be part of those joint meetings. So there's a conversation that we're having internally of, if we do joint meetings, should it be Board of Health and Select Board, Board of Health and School Board, or should we have a joint meeting of all three boards together? So that's just where we are right now. And the school committee meeting was very informative. I highly recommend you watch it. And for people at home who watch this meeting, go to that meeting and watch that. It was very informative. There was some, on occasion, you know, people feel passionate on both sides. So both sides had some bias in their discussion, but it was really good scientific information that we need to have. I would like to see PFAS numbers down to 0. But I do think that that may be impossible. So it is a conversation that we need to have more in depth before we move forward.
We're not sure when that's going to be.
That's gonna be hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. We last I heard, the discussion was possibly doing a joint meeting in the next 3 or 4 weeks, which is March, essentially. But we do have until early April before we need to do any recommendations for the town meeting in May.
Melissa?
Thanks, Steve. I was at that school committee workshop. It was really informative. And I guess just to pick a little bit at this idea, Roberto, a sort of ban on PFAS, how would that look? You know, because my understanding is the element of PFAS is in so many things. So just walk me through how would we structure that?
Yes, so it would be things like a performance standard. So right now, the performance standard for drinking water is 20 parts per trillion. In the state of Massachusetts, 70 parts per trillion in the EPA standard for these 6 specific PFAS. They call them the PFAS 6. What I would suggest in something like a ban like that would require a performance standard of 0.01 parts per trillion, which is an effective ban at that point.
Mm-hmm.
So that way, you know, it's a 1,000-fold decrease.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, a 2,000-fold decrease from where it is now, which is a standard that so far has been impossible to reach. So what happens is it makes it easier for these corporations to find an alternative to PFAS rather than try to meet that standard. Now, where you don't ban an entire industry,
Mm-hmm.
You just force them to find something else.
And just to follow up on that, Steve, thinking beyond just the debate around turf, what other elements or parts of our community might that affect? I mean, is it going to be so granular, like building materials, or, I mean, it's like, what rabbit hole are we entering?
That's where it would be easier to put it into more like a bylaw regarding purchasing.
Mm,
Or a discussion regarding purchasing,
Yeah.
because the standard is different in each material. The exposure is different in each material.
Yeah.
Right now, we're talking about exposures in a turf field,
Yeah.
which is for youth, and it is in the sun, rain, and acidic leaching environment, or in this case, an alkaline leaching environment. So it has to meet those specific performance standards. If we're talking about the paint in our walls, in an office,
Yeah.
then you might have a little bit of a higher standard at that point. And ATM, it's very similar to what the ASTM standards are. So those sorts of performance standards are what we'd be looking for. I would still agree in that with the turf, as we move forward with the turf, we should keep that standard as low as possible.
So are you suggesting that we not take a stance on the turf? Because I feel like I was at that meeting and I watched it as well. And I think that the science is pretty damning for the turf industry, especially in light of the Super Bowl and all of the NFL players and companies calling for turf to be torn up and everyone to go back to grass.
I'm not
You
saying
feel like it's a health, huh?
I'm not saying that we don't take a stance, not at all. I'm not saying to not take a stance. What I'm suggesting is for specific products, we should set the standard, which becomes an effective ban. We can, by targeting PFAS itself. The arguments that NFL is doing with turf is about sports-related injuries, the burns, things like that. That's a different argument altogether. And we do need to keep those kind of separate from the PFAS discussion. Because if we want to make that decision, we also have to look at we need a sports scientist to discuss injuries and risk assessment in that way. If we're talking about sports injury risk of turf versus grass. In this case, we're talking about PFAS. And I want to keep we definitely should take a stance on PFAS itself.
I just want to make sure we take a stance before town meeting because this is going to come up and they're going to be asking for $16 million, which I don't really think would get approved. However, I know that the campus-wide committee has been doing a road show and going around and talking to every group that is around to convince them that the turf is okay. And I think that the scientists that work for Weston and Sampson,
yes,
if they are not countered with the other side, people could be convinced that because they basically say, well, it is going to go into our water, but they don't really want to say that. So I just want to make sure we make a stance that the PFAS is bad and that the turf would go into our water and would poison our water, and that people should know that so that we don't end up not being able to drink it.
And that's that joint meeting I was talking about at the beginning, that would be the meeting where we actually, all three boards would make a vote. And we're trying to get that scheduled for March as of right now.
Yeah, I will look at the video of the meeting. It sounds interesting. But as I asked before, where is the literature? I'm sorry, but if there's not peer-reviewed literature, people speaking at meetings and videos are not going to be challenged the same way. I'm sorry.
the issue that we're running in. That's the issue that I mentioned earlier too, in that there's no peer reviewed literature on PFAS and turf. I know there's one pre-published article from one of the scientists that was on the committee there on Tuesday, Dr. Peasley. I'm sure if you ask for it personally, you could probably get the manuscript, but it's not peer reviewed yet.
You know, you can say anything and make an argument. It has to be rigorous science. And I want to make sure that we just don't get rolling ahead with the emotion here and make a rational decision. And I've read what I can, but from a scientist's point of view, I have no opinion.
It's very difficult.
It's going to be hard for me to vote on anything right now.
Melissa?
Thanks, Steve. Malcolm, I think you bring up a really great point. And one of the things that I took away from that meeting is that the science on PFAS and turf is so new. I think that one of the scientists mentioned that, you know, she was the one who sort of discovered it, and that was only in 2019. So where the community is really struggling, and I think in deference to the hard work of the campus-wide committee planning group, is that they've spent a number of years doing this campus-wide plan. This is one extra element of it, to do these fields and make space to build another school. And the PFAS issue is so new, it's, you know, caught up with everyone. So to get the information that you are looking for, and I think the community is looking for, is just not there yet. It's difficult to find, which gives me pause. At the select board meeting, you know, one of my recommendations to the committee was, is there a way to phase this project so we can move forward with some of the elements of the development of the campus-wide plan that on its own, you know, that if we removed turf from the conversation, the plan is a really good one. And it's a wonderful asset and upgrade to our community. These fields were not built and to sustain the amount of use they're getting right now. So I don't want to throw, well, sounds like a terrible metaphor since there's a baby on our Zoom call, but the baby out with the bathwater, right? And I'm encouraging all of us to come up with a way to be patient on the decision about what's the right material to use on these two fields and still find a way forward for progress with the rest of the plan. And I think the idea is that the science, we can, and I like Roberto's suggestion that as policymakers, we have to make regulations that are founded on the science that we know today. And so I would support that exploration of PFAS science, but I also do, like you, want to approach this conversation rationally and still give the community the opportunity to develop an asset that we need, and that our children can benefit from. And by the way, I think the rest of the community can benefit from, without being so contentiously focused on the material at this point. So Meredith's idea of like putting a pause on installing turf, I think was also something that had merit early on. I like the idea of having some greater PFAS standard, and just continuing the conversation. And again, I'll just say it for the record, I really encourage the planning committee, if possible, to restructure this, because this conversation is so new, the science is so new. Let's not lose momentum on the great parts of the hard work they've already put into the other parts of this plan. That's my comment for now. Thank you.
Malcolm?
I just have one more comment. I don't think anyone really understands the term science. Everyone uses the term, particularly in this very politically charged environment nationally, as I have science to tell me this. Science is saying this. If you really understand science, science is debate. Science is controversy. And I get very upset when I hear people say the science says this. Well, the science says this, but the science also says something else. The beauty of science is it corrects itself. It takes time. So we have to be careful about how we use the term and that we don't go rushing ahead. That's all I'm saying. Thank you.
Thanks. Anybody else? Well, we'll know when that's gonna happen, when our joint meeting and,
Yes, we'll get that out as soon as we.
interesting. I'm gonna, tend to be on board with Malcolm with, I'd love to find some more stuff to read about. And I can't believe in this this global world that there isn't some type of study that's been done. It's this, I'm sure that, synthetic turf's been around for a long time and it's all over the world. So we'll see what we can come
I
up with.
think the issue is just the linkage of that material with PFAS. That's where how I understood at this meeting, that's where the new discoveries are, and getting the peer-reviewed kind of science that we're looking for to make an informed policy decision is in the nascent stages of being developed. My computer is going to die, so I'm happy to make a motion to adjourn before it does.
I second that before mine does. And it's getting dark in here. I can't even see
Yeah,
myself. let alone you.
we barely can see you. Okay,
Well-
all in favor, roll call vote, Jim Cooper,
Yes.
Malcolm McNabb,
Yes.
Melissa Murphy,
Yes.
Mike Lepre.
Yes.
All right, everybody, Steve Visco says yes. Thanks for coming.
All right,
Yeah.
thank you all.
We'll talk soon.
Thank you
Take
all.
care. Bye-bye.
Bye.